about stuff. Oh, hello.
Hello, Robyn, I'm in Seattle and Robyn is where are you,
I'm
sunny?
in Florida. I'm in Naples with my family in a caftan. So,
Yeah, I meant to comment. It looks as if you legally become Floridian. Like the outfit is very, like they make
you
you
know, it's a fuck it, I'm wearing a caftan kind of day.
now. Yeah, so we were discussing earlier that it was just sort of annoying that we kind of knew Joe Manchin was eventually going to screw over Build Back Better, but why did he have to do it on a Sunday? It's not like
Yeah,
you and I are opposed to doing really hard news on a Sunday, but it needs to not
I'm a
be
little opposed to
news.
it. I was no. Uh,
I like if there's an alien invasion happens, or
yeah.
like something like that is gold. We want to be there for it and do our coverage of it. But like Manchin going on Fox News and telling,
Of all places, of course. Why not? Why not Fox News?
so your piece kind of obviously documented the reality of what's happening, document what he said. Something has happened since then. And one of the Wonkette commentators pointed out this of how um, we were accused of Wonkette's negative coverage of Manchin was so unfair because he reads us and it breaks his heart when
Yes.
we're writing anything negative about him because he was always going to get to yes, which is always that sort of generosity that
No,
spirit
no, no.
never gets appointed to Ariana Presley or
Yeah, no, never, no.
where it's like, okay, well, she might have said a mean tweet, but she'll eventually get to yes. It's more of like, how dare you? Like, so he's allowed this kind of, but
Well, it's
what
like,
I've
he has to
seen
be
of
babied and like I'm sorry, I don't think that there's oh, if we give Joe Manchin a bowl of M&Ms with all of the yellow ones taken out, he'll feel loved enough to, not sign a thing that'll make it so people don't have to pay $1,000 a month for insulin. That's not a thing. Like, if we're just nice to him enough. Like, no, no. In fact, I would say the problem is that people were too nice to him. I don't think they should have passed the infrastructure package like until he got on board with this. And, I
yeah,
think those who didn't vote for it were right.
and I want to address that because what's happened is a lot of, and I think um, the polite
Yeah.
Victorian English term for this, a lot of suckers have said that, well, Biff has great stuff in it. And my response is, well, yes, suckers.
Hmm.
That was deliberately carved out. So if it's just like you came to me and it's like, okay, well, here's everything about a party like that you like, Stephen. So
Yeah.
here's food and nice cocktails, and it's all in your home. We'll carve that out from strange people and small talk at someone else's house. And but if
You'd
we give
rather
you
have the party at your house, really?
we'll
What are
give
you
you
guys
all of
talking
that
about?
with
What is
just
wrong with you?
we'll
Sorry.
give you all of that, and then the thing with other people we can get your support on later, sure. But you're deliberately making something that is easier for, I mean, there was no, as someone else had commented on, of like, well, we have this wonderful, bipartisan infrastructure legislation that we should campaign on. It's like, okay, well, I want to keep coming back to the fact that
Yeah,
this is
no,
something
yeah.
that Mitch McConnell approved. And
Hmm.
I'm a reasonable person. If you can find evidence that Mitch McConnell is either a chump, which he's not, or in possession of a human soul, which he is not, then maybe he would have done something that would any possible way benefit Democrats and Joe Biden in 2022 and 2024, and it won't. So what happened was he got this situation where by carving it out, he allows it to be something that the Glenn Youngkins, who's already been proven capable of kicking our asses, right? Like
Yeah.
those kind of nice, non-Trump, polite Republicans that we were not prepared for, to kind of run at the House and Senate level on, oh, look what we were able to do in a bipartisan manner with our fellow Republicans and some Democrats. and that's great. And they will run on that while, and also by carving it out, they have then this whole big thing of this, his entire social plan was this evil right wing, this evil socialist scam that he's able to like, and Republicans valiantly beat back this socialist scam thanks to Manchin and Sinema. So elect more Republicans, and you get this.
Oh my God, the Fox News crowd loves them. I was looking at the YouTube comments, and they're like, it's one Democrat who really loves America enough to fuck over a lot of children.
Yeah. So this was no benefit.
And, you know.
Yeah, you should have made it one deal. So like Biff, there's no reason that said Biff had to just be roads. Biff could have been roads. And no, we're not going to child poverty, Medicare, that all is all part of it. And if Republicans don't want to vote on this, then they don't get roads. They don't get those things, because that's McConnell's like, yeah, I'd love to get some roads for my state. What's the best scenario I can get that for me? And screw over like 98% of the Democratic caucus at the same time. That is, a pro McConnell, result, which, you can try to spin that as a positive, but again, what you've gotten is a pro McConnell result. And instead,
I think the people who think you can run on that are the people who think that like a pro McConnell result is what what all the constituents everywhere want. Like, I think that's their assumption. Like, it's this belief that like, all Democratic proposals are repulsive to everyone, but everyone likes all the Republican stuff, which is, not actually true. But, you say it often enough. You say anything often enough, people will go along with you on it.
Well, that's the fear. It's like the guy, I sent you that tweet of the gentleman who was just like, oh, well, I don't want to lecture my constituents in my district about abortion rights. People.
Oh God, yeah.
And he's like, well, you've got a Democrat using pro-life, which is a right-wing talking point, because they're not a pro-life party, and they're anti-abortion, but he can't even have the fight. And this is something I predicted, that moderates, everyone's like, oh, this, these abortion bans will cause us to rise up from the suburbs of this. No, because what's more likely to happen is just this. These folks won't talk about abortion. The worst thing to ever happen, given the state of the Democratic Party today, is to take anything like abortion and make it where we are in a activist position on it. Activism is loud and annoying and ugly, and Democrats hate that. A nice polite tweet, or maybe a few snaps of the, from Jen Psaki to Peter Doocy, that's cool, but not like really angry people over something, and not necessarily having to basically state, this is morally wrong. You guys are morally wrong. They don't want that. So this is kind of more of what you're seeing. But back to Manchin, what I found fascinating also from this reaction to this is like the level of denial, the idea that, Psaki had mentioned this as well, of the idea of, he's been lying to us all along, and he's been shifting in the winds, but maybe he will shift in the winds back in the right position, like kind of like where the clocks. Like,
sure.
At us in like those movies where the clocks are like, well, the symbols have reached this one moment, and now we can raise Satan or something. It's like, well, no, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he's had a very clear agenda. He ripped. When he ripped you guys off, that was the plan all along, was to get the one vote on this, to exert his power and cut and run, and that's what happened. But there's sense of, like I was told, well, you don't understand West Virginia voters. It's like, okay, like how do I presume that they are human mammals. And as human mammals, when someone goes on Fox News, communicates directly to them about how much something sucks, this sucks, this is terrible, and it's awful, it's the worst thing ever, Robyn. And I'm going to come back and say, okay, everything I told you, Robyn, how that was the worst thing ever, and I can't explain it, supporting it. I now support it because it's a minor change, not a major change, but a minor change. Seems unrealistic to me. It seems like he's very clearly saying no. But then all
I feel like he's been very clearly saying no since the beginning, and it's just been jerking everyone around because he can.
Yeah.
And I think
why are Democrats sounding like the kind of obsessed stalker in a Lifetime movie? It seems like he is saying no.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, I mean, very much from a consent standpoint, he is saying no. And it's like, we can get him to yes. It's like not, it's kind of creepy to me, and also just specifically not realistic.
They could if, like, you know, they were willing to say, you know, you're not getting this thing that you want if, you know, if you don't vote for this, putting like a little bit of stick in there, because, you know, that's clearly the only thing that will work with him. You know, he loves getting to, you know, oh, he was so thrilled to say, like, I got $9 billion for in the defense package for West Virginia's interests with a defense package. Like, he loves being able to do that. Don't give West Virginia nothing until he gets in line. I mean, no hate to West Virginia, but, like, you know, you gotta lay the law down. That's how stuff gets done.
Yeah, well, it seems that the perception is that he is going to inevitably say yes because of some back and forth in a dance.
Because actually, he's a really good person who, you know, just wants Democrats to put the best bill possible out there.
But it seems like there's also no evidence of this at this level. I mean, there's cases where he has eventually supported something, but there usually was some major changes, and he was never as devout a no. One example someone had posted was, oh, well, he originally said he wasn't going to vote for the For the People Act. And then, you know, he now kind of supports voting rights. It's like, well, voting rights will not pass. And he's still very clear, like when he opposed the For the People Act, he said, I can't support a partisan solution to partisan voter suppression. So the only way I will support any response to, like, any sort of
he basically said he will support nothing but Republican bills, and that is it. Like, that is all he will be doing ever. Like,
yes, he will support, and you know, and everyone is like,
someone tells you who they are.
At least he's a Democrat, and that's true. The challenge with that is you need to kind of, he's a weird example of that, because it's sort of, well, look what, he's a weird example of that because he overtly expresses the support of, like, we all need to work together. Republicans are good people. They have good ideas. But then Democrats explain why we need Manchin because Republicans are so scary. Well, if we didn't need Manchin, you know, poor Biden couldn't wipe his bottom. He wouldn't have a cabinet. He wouldn't have been able to confirm any judges. It was like it would be like he's not even president. It's like, okay, well, if we're in a situation where the president can't do basic constitutional stuff unless he has a Democratic majority in the Senate, which is a new thing. I mean, generally, when a Republican president's like, okay, unless the guy's a complete fascist, we're going to confirm your, at least allow votes for your cabinet and so forth. And, but he's not saying, like, well, Republicans are bad people, and we need to do certain things to stop them from being overtly bad. And here's what they've done to the Senate. Manchin repeatedly says that everything that's bad about the Senate is essentially Liz Warren.
Yeah.
And so he's essentially,
he thinks the Democrats are that he thinks that the Republicans have the right idea with pretty much everything, and that the Democrats are the problem. That is his position, like, on everything.
Yeah, and I mean, what was also kind of silly is someone's like, okay, well, Manchin might have killed Build Back Better, but why aren't we pressuring the 50 Republicans?
Oh, no.
Like, well, they're Republicans, and we all knew they would not support
51 senators.
They didn't vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, oh yes, and you don't support. Presume they don't support his agenda.
Yeah,
Cinema
no.
voted for Joe Biden. Manchin endorsed Joe Biden, and the whole reason, mind you, again, when it was Warren and Sanders, it's not an endorsement of either candidate. This is specifically an endorsement
Yep.
of the primary, where we were told where Manchin and others were like, well, I don't know if I could support crazy wealth tax lady or Sanders. I couldn't support their socialist agenda. Fair enough. That would mean, oh well, I guess we couldn't count on Manchin and those and Cinema if we were to nominate Warren or Sanders. But instead, we got Biden, who was supposed to have buddies in a Republicans caucus, and he had Manchin and whatever. So yes, based on the deal we made, we expected that Manchin would support the president's agenda, the one he supported. I mean, Ted Cruz has been fairly consistent about his opposition to Joe Biden and to Democratic priorities. I mean, again, if I have friends over to my house and they rob me, that is also a much more personal betrayal. That's not, it's not cool to be told of, well, why are you upset that your cousin, when staying with you, stole your TV? What about all the criminals out there who would love to steal your television? It's like, well, I think you're missing what I really feel betrayed about. And the big response that I keep seeing, and look, I get it. Things look dire right now. I understand that. It's like, okay, well, we need to make Manchin and Cinema irrelevant. We need to flip Wisconsin and hold Georgia, and once we flip Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Florida, once we run the tables, we will make them irrelevant. That's certainly an option. But again, if someone has stolen your identity and emptied your bank account, the cop telling you, well, Robyn, the best solution right now is for you to go out and make some more money.
Yeah.
And that will make theft totally irrelevant. Have you considered winning the lottery? Because you're statistically just as likely as Democrats are, given these scenarios. It's not even just like torching his legislative agenda makes it very hard to win elections. And so the response is that, okay, well, again, let's campaign as if voters are not human mammals, that they are very well spoken. And so the Vulcan response is that, okay, don't be disappointed, you lousy young people, you lousy liberals, don't be disappointed, go vote. Ruby Bridges, John Lewis, the spirit of all that, go out and vote to the extent that you can legally vote, because we haven't protected your voting rights, and to the extent that your vote won't be overturned because we won't protect voting rights. Still, go out there and win, even despite our losses.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I wish that was enough. It would be great if just the very fact that Republicans are terrible would allow us to win elections. There's been evidence that's not the case. So you need to
generally speaking, no.
That's, we almost lost New Jersey. We just lost heavily in Virginia. It wasn't enough to go Trump boogeyman, or whatever, especially when Republicans were coming hard with, we're nice, polite Republicans, even, and here's some crazy right-wing rhetoric that we're still posting. So and it was a complete slaughter. So you need to kind of come back harder and more, and it can't just be about blaming the voters.
Well, because it also this is the thing, like, I hate to sound cheesy, but it also has to be like a positive message to some degree, not just like, hey, the other guy's worse. Like that, it has to be like, you get something, no one's gonna, people are, so like, let me collect my thoughts. Joe Manchin is voting the way that he is voting out of his own personal interest, because the way that he's voting means he's going to be richer. His daughter's going to be richer. The people that he hangs out with are going to be richer. Like, that's going to be great for them. Other human beings also vote out of their own self-interest a lot of the time. And you have to give people a little bit of something where they're like, oh, my life is going to be better in this way if this person is elected. You know, Trump sort of promised people that their relatives wouldn't call them racist on Facebook anymore if he was elected. And while he could not actually make that happen, they were really looking forward to that. Like, they felt that would improve their lives. And Democrats need to find something that they can do that actually improves people's lives beyond we're generally pleasant and not crazy. Like,
Well, and as much as Republicans did feel, and a lot of Trump voters, a lot of the regular Trump voters felt, which is why you wound up with a near coup, they felt that Trump had delivered for them.
yeah.
Republican and Democrats tried to respond, no, here's what he didn't do, and here's what he's not, and he's not a
And that didn't
revolutionary.
matter because they felt that he did.
You know, they felt like you've given me this world again, and this is why, even though I live in a town you would never have visited in your life prior to this, you're my guy.
Yeah.
And so, we've seen that, like, with people will criticize, David Hogg and others for talking about not addressing student debt relief, and others. It's like, well, that's not important. What's important now? At the time, it was Build Back Better. But then that has ended. So now they're saying what's important is democracy is at stake, which is not a compelling. What does that mean for democracy to be at stake? And
human beings are lazy.
oh yes, and so you lazy young people, why don't? And I just get these people, middle-aged folks. I'm middle-aged, so I will say this with these things of just like young people today and all this sort of reaming at them. It's like, why do you need it? Well, you don't need. You're spoiled, Veruca Salts or whatever. It's like, okay, well, look, if someone has had a 50-point swing in approval amongst a key demographic demo, that it's bad. You sort of want these people to vote, and you want them to continue to vote for you, because the problem is that Trumpism has engaged a lot of younger people who identify with Trumpism and identify with, like, Turning Point USA is a problem. Even we do this. We make fun of those guys, but they are a problem. That is a youth movement. And fascist movements need a youth movement, and we are still kind of
can't have them because a lot of the Democrats find the youth people in like the youth movement type things like incredibly embarrassing, and will say so very vocally. Like, they don't like it. They want they don't want like any new people ever, because unless they're like they've paid their dues, and they don't want anything new. So like, they don't want anything young, they don't want anything new, but they want young people to just fall in line and do what they're supposed to do and do their job and vote for Democrats. And yes, that would be lovely, but it's not the reality that anyone gets to live in. And you can't say, oh, you're spoiled for wanting someone to do something for you to make your life a little bit easier and more manageable, but I'm totally great and selfless and not self-centered at all by asking expecting the entire world to behave the way I think they should behave. Like,
and also, if you generally believe democracy is at stake, then okay, well, just write off a bunch of student loan. Like, and I sent you another tweet. I'm not gonna mention the person's name, but like a Democrat talking about how it'd be a bad thing, a bad precedent, or whatever, to roll back.
but that's like literally.
Well, my point is how much is this? 3.5 trillion one time. How many bad presidents you want to set? Isn't the democracy's end a bad precedent? If that's enough, you stop Trump, you're going to get a bunch of happy Veruca Salts to come out for you and their friends on TikTok. If that will help, isn't that worth it? But it seems like, oh no, that's not worth it. We need to save democracy.
Because I think more of what it's about is they don't want people to learn to expect things. And that's more than the money. They don't want people going, oh, well, the government, this worked out for me this time. Maybe the government can actually do things to help me in other ways, because then they'll just be pushy. And I think that that's really what's at the heart of it
Mhm.
to some degree. Like for a lot of people, they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, if we forgive their student loans, where does it end?
Well, and midterms especially, but all elections are base driven. That is a reality. Stop pushing towards the center. Republicans realized a long time ago it's base driven. So Republicans, despite assumably being in the wilderness in this year, right? There were not any position of power. They passed on the state level these election integrity bills. So essentially, we heard you. You believe this election was stolen. We have responded to it. Wink, wink. Pass these bills. It won't happen again. And then, oh, you believe abortion is murder? We've responded to that. We've passed these about abortion bans, and our right wing Supreme Court has encouraged it. We're in power. There were more school shootings. They didn't even talk about any sort of gun control because we control everything. We hear you. You're in our control. You are in our boat. We deliver to you. That gets people to come out in droves, and you need to find something to do for that beyond telling the other side that democracy is at risk. That's just not compelling. Also, and I think we've discussed this, the reality is that what does it even mean when a lot of Democratic pundits talk about democracy being at stake? Or I mean, it's not essentially by 2025, we're not talking about the Matrix when I'm like plugged into Hughes or even a Handmaid's Tale. I mean, and my issue of a Handmaid's Tale is that it presents it in a sort of very scary, non-fashion forward view of the past. Whereas, look, I've got a lot of friends who love them some Jane Austen, and they're like, "Oh, this is wonderful! What a wonderful time!" It's like, well, you don't understand that Pride and Prejudice, like the whole motivation of it is that the only way out for this family, like Lizzie Bennet being turned out on the street, and because she couldn't inherit her own birthright, would have gone to a man, is that she was able to marry well. This nice rich guy who made everything better for her, but she had no power, she had no autonomy or whatever. But if I were to show that to someone, no one's going to think, oh, what a horrible dystopian nightmare state Pride and Prejudice and Emma is. Or if I show someone
like pretty dresses.
Yeah. And if I show someone Greece, it's like, well, that Greece is awesome. That's great. I love this. It's like, well, that's the 1950s. Things were very bad for Black people during that period of time. That's the nightmare state we're going back to. And it's not like a majority of white voters who continually vote for Republicans that
could have their own credit cards until the 70s. So like
I mean, they don't look at that as like
the official outfits that get to people. You're very right about the fashion forward thing. The second there's official outfits, that's when it's dystopia. Not not in any other situation.
So this talk it makes it, because what will happen is Republicans, what is the response? Republicans gain power in 2022, they gain power in 2024. They will say, well, a lot of the screaming about democracy ending, do you feel democracy is ending? And the majority of white people who, again, voted for Republicans, even if elections are overturned, it would still be in those states, a majority of white people had voted for the candidate. So they'd be like, this seems to be reflecting how I feel. So what is this idea that everyone's going to be in the streets is very unlikely unless, and what that does, what really happens, and the reason I think a lot of Democrats use the flowery language of democracy is at stake, because they don't want to make this in a way, the racial issue it is, which is, and even, and that people of color, LGBTQ, women, this is the stuff that's going to happen to them, and it's terrible. And to really lean into it. Bell Hooks had died this year, and if I said that she's someone people need to, I think, mention more when we talk about the critical race theory, because all of this is stuff that she's either said, or at least the people who are sort of the boogeyman of critical race theory have been influenced by her. One thing she I think that was always inspiring to me, and you've hinted at this as well, is that she defined feminism as the end to sexist oppression. And feminism is not self-determination. And I think self-determination is important because that goes to about this, where someone is like Kayleigh McEnany or Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's like, well, why am I not Woman of the Year? I'm a badass woman who's this, or or a Republican. It's like,
Yeah.
why isn't Amy Coney Barrett celebrated? Because she's one of the women on the Supreme Court, and so forth. And it's like, well, it's not self-determination. You are using your power to inflict sexist oppression on society. That makes you a bad person.
Let's also be real here. They don't actually want that so much as like, they do want it, but they don't actually think that like what they would like is a world in which people are like, yeah, Amy Coney Barrett, victory for feminism, and they then get to benefit from that. And people are like, well, guess their shit can't be sexist because they put this lady on the Supreme Court. That's what they want. They don't actually want a world where, shit is equal. They want a world where they get the good PR for it being equal, and that's all they care about. Or just like they want good PR in general. Look at how mad they were that Melania didn't have enough Vogue covers or whatever during Trump's tenure.
Well,
like, they're mad about that.
Definition of diversity being, I mean, Trump went all the way in it. I mean, Bush was doing bad stuff while at the same time was actually going in a direction of visibility amongst people of color to where it looks like, oh, well, we have Colin Powell, your Secretary of State is Black, National Security Advisor is a Black woman who later became Secretary of State. Well, this is cool. Your Attorney General is a Latino man. This is awesome. Those type of things, whereas they're all doing objectively bad stuff.
Yeah.
I think Trump was, again, of like, no, I just want a bunch of white guys and attractive white women in specific types of roles. Like the women in his administration were doing specific types of things he believed a woman should do. But but again, I think Democrats had trouble of like, well, that's easy. His stuff is so overtly racist and overtly sexist. We could sort of challenge him, but how do you challenge when Tim Scott's the vice presidential nominee and saying America's not, this ticket isn't racist. We're not racist. Democracy isn't over. And the only way to really engage that is to drop critical race theory type of stuff. Like to say, no, here's what it is. And instead, there's been a retreat from it. So to me, it feels as if Republicans almost give a prelude of the battle they're going to fight. Hit you in these areas. We're going to hit you on how you sort of defined what it is to be racist in this sort of polite 1980s way. And we're going to hit you with that.
Yeah.
And to actually then make the case, you're going to have to like have uncomfortable discussions you don't want. And
if the end of racism is Tim Scott being vice president, or the end of sexism is Amy Coney Barrett being on the Supreme Court, then that means no one has to give up any of their actual power. And that's, what they specifically don't want to do. And that's why they like, oh, hey, look, a woman CEO, that feminism, check that off. We're done. We're all set now.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt.
On the that reminded me of our corporate realm. That's something I wanted to talk about before the Mansion News came out. You'd written about Amazon earlier and the striking issues and the kind of poor workplace conditions. And I remember a lot of people were very quick to defend Jeff Bezos. And my point of view is like, maybe I'm like a really petty Black man, and I probably am. But Jeff Bezos doesn't need my help.
Yeah, no.
Like I figure maybe if I was walking on the street, I'm in Seattle now, and someone was like beating up Jeff Bezos, I would be tempted to help as a human being. But at the same time, I figure like he's a billionaire. Surely he has a guy to handle that. This is free market. Why am I getting involved? And who knows? It's probably a crazy billionaire thing he might enjoy. I don't understand billionaires. So, but ultimately, why do I, as a person who is not a billionaire, wasting my time and emotional energy to defend other billionaires? is this obsession with either feeling like, I think a lot of Democrats have this, I need to feel as if I am being relentlessly fair at all times and objective, and that will somehow, I will then somehow become a billionaire because I'm being fair. You know, if I am
Really embarrassed. I don't, I actually don't think it's that so much as like the whole vibe in America until I'm gonna say like 2008, maybe around the crash, was very, very like we must protect the job creators at all costs. And it was very sympathetic to billionaires and like rich people. And it was very, very much centered on, we have to be nice to them or else they'll take all of the jobs away and everyone will be poor. Which
Yes, they have so
uh,
much power, we cannot dare challenge their
yeah.
power, or they will
And there
use
was this
power.
very, and I think a lot of people just still haven't shaken that. Like they're still like, no, we have to protect the billionaires at all costs. They are, I believe, the children are our future, but also the billionaires, because they're an expression of like how you can be successful in America, and that for a while that was like patriotism. You can't insult if you say rich people are bad and you hate America.
Yes, a sort of American exceptionalism is billionaires going in rockets out of their own. All at the same time, that is countered with, oh, and America is so great that this, you know, 60-year-old woman who still works at a, plant, and has no vacation time and no sick leave, and that's probably run by, that a billionaire is exploiting all of that
Yeah.
labor. But her coworkers, who are also being similarly exploited, donated money to buy her a car so she could get to work. Isn't
Yeah.
that great about America? And now let's go switch and watch the billionaire owners
Yes.
of this plant.
The vast majority of uplifting / heartwarming news is actually incredibly depressing.
We should probably have a better system. Like, why is this person? But we presume this. We presume that there's somehow, and I've obviously never been in a billionaire scenario, right? But I've been in jobs where, like, somehow it was determined that my labor was worth more than other people. Like, but just sitting down, well, I'm an idea person. I had this idea for how to make systems and things work, and that's more invaluable than the people who execute upon those systems and do the work. And somehow someone determined that was the idea, that was the case. Like, there's fewer people who can come up with the ideas that Amazon has had, and come up with who can program, who can code, who can do anything. And it is up to, but the world is filled with people who can kind of do those jobs and do the work. And when they don't come back, so after things started becoming very, essential workers, when we liked the workers for about 8 minutes. And then when it was like, oh, it's hard to staff people at restaurants and staff people, then suddenly it's like, oh, maybe they're so valuable, we need to start paying them more, especially now that their jobs seem inherently dangerous. They are saying, no, they're just lazy and shiftless. And then it turned out they actually were responding responsibly. I think a lot of people were getting out of industries that were seen as unstable and say, okay, well, I'm just going to do this job, which is potentially more stable. And as we're seeing now, we have the Omicron variant. Like, there are people who are just like, oh no, why would have gone back to restaurants again? Now that I would get no tips during my busiest time of the year because that was Christmas, that sort of thing. So it's like, I've learned that this is not helpful, and I moved into something else. Not that I'm lazy, it's just like I'm trying to survive professionally. And so it is this obvious kind of issue right now. And I think that hurt a lot of folks. Like, I've seen it's an issue with Omicron, and I don't know how to put this. It seems as if, for whatever reason, and maybe because last year there's this brief moment where, and that was a specific circumstance where Democrats controlled the House and weren't going to filibuster in the Senate any real COVID relief just to hurt Trump. which if Hillary Clinton had been president, we understand they would have said, this is a great opportunity. Republicans would have said, COVID only happened because you exist.
Mm-hmm.
The curse of the first woman
Oh
president.
yeah.
You need
Oh,
to
absolutely.
resign or step down, not run again, or we will continue filibustering. And the media would have been, why is Hillary Clinton not resigning so that people can get COVID relief? But for whatever reason, for humanity's sake, Democrats have behaved like humans. They passed COVID relief. But since then, it seems as if the response from a lot of liberals I've seen has been, okay, well, here's the response that must happen, which just seems to again exist in a world where Republicans don't exist. Like, okay, well, there's a lot of things we would love to see happen that will not.
Yeah.
Because of the world where Republicans exist. So if you were to shut down everything for a month now, there is no relief. There's no,
Yeah.
I mean, not even the stuff we can build back better, which is so infuriating about what Manchin said, because it's like, well, that would actually help people, like reducing, your child poverty, child tax credit, Medicare. That will help people if they're going to lose their jobs, everything from this continuing pandemic.
Here's the thing, though. And he keeps saying inflation. What he actually thinks is if people are not dirt fucking poor, that things are going to cost more for him, the super millionaire guy, and the value of his fortune is going to go down. Like all of the, fretting about inflation is all about people on the bottom getting a little bit more because people have it stuck in their heads that, oh, unless we keep these people at like starvation wages and a significant amount of people at starvation wages, then prices of everything is going to go on for us.
Well, and his argument of like how do I explain ending child poverty to poor people? I don't know how to explain this. How do words work, Robyn? how do I explain? But this is all because we're elitists, Robyn. We don't understand the salt of the earth people in West Virginia. So we might just think, well, why don't you just go on television as one of the few Democrats, because you've been elected there, few Democrats who trust, that West Virginians trust, why don't you go on and actually sell all the cool things? Because individually, they all, in West Virginians, support almost everything in the bill. And and Republicans are hitting it based on the identity politics. Basically, everything that Biden and Harris are associated with is evil socialism and will make your children transgender and socialist and critical race theory bill. And Manchin's ability to break that down and then say, no, here's all the cool stuff in it. Here's why I support it. And he's not doing that. Like, that's what his one value is. Instead, he's repeating Republican talking points. He's basically saying, and he's giving a platform for other Republicans who would say, especially your quote unquote moderates. So someone running doesn't have to sound like a crazy critical race theory person. They could say, well, I mean, that sounds good, but even there was bipartisan support against that. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema were concerned, and I'm concerned, and now go vote for me. So it is overtly bad. Someone had asked that we could end this on an up note eventually.
I know.
But I don't know. They literally
ruined our entire day. You guys were going to get from me this morning, and I'm very upset. I'm very sad. A review of Christmas with a capital C, a holiday movie. Oh, sorry, Christmas movie starring Jefferson Darcy from Married with Children, which I know Stephen loves. No one loves Married with Children or brings it up as often as Stephen. Oh my gosh, what's that noise? Feedback.
Oh, it is someone's me. I love that show. I actually prefer the pre-Jefferson Darcy.
Yeah, period. I think we all do. But yeah, I was just going to do a very nice and light, funny review of that movie, but no, Joe Manchin had to go and be an asshole, and that is actually why I am here in my pajamas, basically. Um, I put some eyeshadow on because I got a really crappy eyeshadow palette that I was playing with, but yeah, no, whole day ruined. Plus, I have cramps. It's a really unfortunate time. So
Yes.
I can't think of anything cheerful. No.
Well,
Can you be cheerful?
there are some good news. There is some good news. I don't have cramps
Yay.
because Joe Manchin blocked this bill, which was going to cause cramps and
Something.
nationwide for non for all men. But yeah, I mean, I wish I could also. But the government's with Christmas, like Christmas stuff is getting canceled. I had a show that I was going to go see. One reason we were doing this earlier was going to see Christmas Town at a local theater in Seattle, Seattle Public Theater, and that unfortunately was canceled because of the COVID issue in the audience. And I think also people are very nervous about Omicron.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be part of the it's just a code crowd. The problem is, I think what has happened is it's a sucky thing of whereas you can get vaccinated and boosted and you might still catch this, but you won't be hospitalized. It will potentially still suck, but you won't be hospitalized and die. It's not the worst thing, but it's also not the same as being like I'm immune and this one I will never catch this. I think that change made things much more complicated for everyone, especially because you had so many people who were like, I still don't want to get vaccinated because it will make me pregnant. I think someone had reported some weird stuff that I've seen online. I think that, well, I don't think it's not a Jesus shot. It's just I don't think spontaneous pregnancy is not a
Even I
side,
haven't seen that one.
but it is and Biden is speaking on Tuesday about the challenges with going into the next year with Omicron. Um, I want to spin positives on this, right? But the problem is like, I, I think you and I are in what we kind of probably most share in common is that we're not necessarily club members. So we're liberals, we're not club members.
Yeah.
So I can't cheerlead for Democrats, and that often makes me the worst person in the world because I am as bad as Republicans don't cheerlead for Democrats, or it's like, well, I can only say here's where this group is not succeeding. I would beat up on Republicans a lot as well, but also, to a certain point, they are well organized, ruthless group, and what you need in response is a very organized group to attack them. And when that group is not able to like respond to the threat, you need to, I mean, shouting at a hurricane is not as efficient as shouting at, the people who should be protecting you from the hurricane, protecting you for other things. So going into next year, I mean, we know that Republicans are going to love the idea that this is going to cause more misery. People are going to be upset. People might lose jobs. People might feel like I'm done with this. Republicans have even, I think Lauren Boebert had tweeted of how Biden promised to end the pandemic, and now he says it's going to be a long winter. Those are two different things because Lauren Boebert's very bright. But yes, those are two different statements.
Yeah, because you can't control the future. That's really
but that is his
very rude of him, frankly. I don't like that.
New taxes. That's his no new taxes thing or so forth. But is like, and the best option we can do, I do think, I would say the extent that liberals have any control over this would be to sort of, here's how we can almost live something close to human lives as fully vaccinated, boosted Americans who take reasonable precautions. But the argument that we should hide in our homes and never see our loved ones, just not a compelling one right now. Like we have to come with some happy medium. Also because it's very privileged. I am someone
Yeah.
who we work from home, so we could say, and we write about politics. We don't, so we could say, yeah, let's shut everything down. Let's sit in your home, never leave, and whatever.
That's super convenient for us.
Yes, but for other
Yeah.
people, and we saw that in 2020, where Biden was really losing support amongst Latinos and border communities. And one of the issues that came up a lot and was that they were very worried about future shutdowns. And this was something, and whenever I post this, I'll get like, where was that data? Which is whenever someone asks you for data on Twitter, you never don't like. It's okay to never respond to them because it's never done, and like it's always a scam.
Yeah.
Trust whatever data you provide them, but it's there. They've had these interviews, they've had these polls, but essentially the mainstream did not want to accept that. They didn't want to accept that the COVID response was because the Democratic establishment believed that its response to COVID was appropriate and good. And the liberal response, the progressive response to police reform was bad. Socialism was bad. So any setbacks that Democrats had in 2020 was because someone said socialism or someone said defund, which were very amorphous type things. And maybe there's some corollary in some places, but they wanted to focus on that and not on the more actual thing that was affecting people's lives. And they're concerned about these things. And sometimes the out of touch response. So when you have someone of like, well, why don't you want your kids to be safe at home with you? You're a bad parent. Why do you want your kids back in school so quickly? And it's like, okay, well, you understand that someone who has to actually leave their house to work, now their choice is, well, I do like my child, but I also like feeding her. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for making my decision grosser by sliming me. So there was a lot of that was happening, and a lot of that, kind of, I don't like to use the term virtue signaling, but there was a lot of virtue signaling about the pandemic in that sense, and like people were really feeling it. And so I hope now that we sort of try to find ways to, again, recognize there are human mammals involved and try to recognize and not just say, this is the right way to do things, but here's what we can kind of do to get you through this. Because otherwise it's going to be, it will be brutal going into 2022 if you don't have, sorry, my computer will sometimes get my text messages. So if you don't have any sort of security right now, because we don't, right? We don't have the ability. There is no help coming in this year.
Yeah.
Things get pretty bad. So within the idea that no major legislation is happening, what would you see as any sort of response to Omicron that we can actually give people?
I mean, I think that we need to, I was going to say data, but no, I think that we need to, take a measured response based on like what it's actually doing, see how many based on hospitalizations, based on, how, quite frankly, based on how many people who are vaccinated are going to hospitals. Like that's what we should be basing stuff off of, frankly. The unvaccinated can, I don't care what but
yeah, and that's apparently a very controversial point.
Someone just tweeted stimulus check. And yes, if we are going to expect people to stay home, then yes, we need to give them money. Like you can't expect people to do that unless they are being have some financial security.
But interject, I mean, with respect to the gentleman who posted this, stimulus check is almost like, it's like when there's a school shooting and you say, well, obviously we need to ban, stimulus check is like what we've kind of over with COVID. It was kind of like similar to like America's response to gun violence, where there used to be almost a sane response, and then Republicans went completely radicalized, and that was over a few decades. With COVID, that was over like 8 months, right? Like they're so radicalized. So now, I mean, and again, a lot of this happened were biting our sights, where how they took Dr. Fauci's approval rating. It was like an old Simpsons episode where they say, we
Yeah.
want to take this nice, when Mr. Burns was running for governor, like we'll take this nice lady and make her from this as a nice lady surrounded by children to this. And she's like being chased by people with pitchforks. And so Dr. Fauci is viewed, Faucism, and he's viewed terribly by half the country who won't listen to him. And you've got this sense of all of this is these people trying to control you and whatever. They don't want you to work. And this is all these stimulus checks. Of course, we want to stand up for freedom and your freedom to exist or whatever. So yeah, I mean, as you said, it's like to look at hospital rates, look at what
you need to be able to give people a valid reason for everything,
Yeah, well, and I totally agree. I mean, I think it seems people will say, what I've seen to that reaction is like, well, it's not just the unvaccinated. What if you have a Mr. Big attack and you need to get to the hospital and you have a competent wife, but you need to get to the hospital and quickly, and you can't because it's filled with unvaccinated people, which is certainly a concern. But
no, I mean, it really is.
Unfortunately, that's not the society we live in. Like, you could apply that to many things, right? So on New Year's Eve, you could close every bar. You could have a curfew at a certain night, and you would certainly save lives, because we sort of have a nationwide holiday for, alcoholism that often results in poor outcomes. But that,
sir, that is St. Patrick's Day. Day of my people.
Yeah, St. Patrick's perhaps more so. But I guess there's so much of that is done.
Don't know this. I'm half Irish.
I felt like it's over the course of a day. So the extent of you kind of get a cruising. By the time you need to go home, maybe you're better off. But like New Year's Eve, it feels like we want you to get good and drunk between like 3 hours. And it's
not for ethnic stereotype related reasons.
Yeah, and it's just like now get home.
Yeah.
And it's cold and icy. At least St. Patrick's Day, it's almost like it's almost spring, so nature is almost in your balance. You're driving home, maybe it's still light in certain places. So, but yeah, I mean, my hope is that we can kind of come with a solution of recognizing that it's not 2020. We're not going to have the support from half the country over this, and that people are going to really, there is long-term damage. If someone says, well, what's the harm in just shut everything down and over a month? And something I find, I just want to speak to liberals who make these arguments. When you say, I can make the sacrifice of not going to my favorite restaurant for a month,
that's not the sacrifice other people are making.
That's a wonderful sacrifice you are making. The person who runs that restaurant and works at that restaurant and lives paycheck to paycheck, and in an industry where a bad month that's it. Like, they're not going to be back. So that's very noble that you were able to kind of go through that. Or it's like, I'll just sit home and watch Netflix. I won't go to the theater. Like, okay, well, you will find other ways of entertaining yourself and being secure in your upper income life. But other people, it's brutal, and Republicans are very good at exploiting that. As I think their evil superpower is recognizing how human mammals feel. They have feelings.
And the irony is that they actually accuse Democrats of that to a large degree. They're like, oh, well, Democrats are just always trying to get people addicted to the government help and everything. But in fact, they are not. If they were giving people actual more government help, then maybe. But maybe they should do more of that. Or, exploiting people's insecurities in various ways. And, they do everything they accuse everyone else of.
Well, yes, that is the evil scam. So, yeah, I mean, but on the positive, you're going to be with your family over the holidays. You're healthy. You've been boosted, right? You said
yes.
How was your reaction?
A miserable bitch last week or the week before last week. So
It was a bet. You had a reaction from
Yes.
that. Yeah, I was on my ass for a day. It's okay, but
Yeah.
it also speaks to, I do understand if there are people who literally work 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
jobs, and they have jobs where it's not like, you know, even if sometimes if I'm feeling, woozy, I'm typing,
Yeah.
right? I'm sitting, okay, I'll just write in my bed, right? That's not, no, if you have to actually stand up on your feet and serve the public or do something where you need to go outside, function in the world, and you're TKO for a day, that's
Yeah.
so I can understand that, but don't listen to Republicans who tell you it's not worth it or that you have some sort of magical immunity. That's a lie. Ron DeSantis was being interviewed, I think today, and he was asked if he'd gotten this COVID vaccination booster, and he was like, he was asked like if he he responded as if he was asked if he pleasures himself when his wife's not around. He was kind of like very evasive. Oh, wait, how do you? That's my personal. It's like no.
Yeah.
You can't say a firm yes or no, which means that you have been, and you care enough about your own health. So just say it. Like I think, yes, I said it. I'm getting it. It's like I'm not endorsing it. You don't have to endorse it, although you should. But you could just at least admit that yes, I.
Well, because now it's a bad look. Like Sarah Palin today was like, no one's ever gonna, make me take the vaccine. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was like, if they want me to take the vaccine, they're gonna have to hold me down. Like, it's now become like a badge of honor to be. Oh no! Like, if you want to try and hold me down and give me a vaccine, they're gonna have another thing coming. And
it feels as if they were like whatever.
And he does have very strong arms, so like I assume.
No one really wants.
Yeah, no.
No, that's not. That's okay. You can go ahead with your. But that's the thing. Like DeSantis is sort of. You can't. All you do is look like an obvious scumbag. Or you're like, huh? What? Why are you asking me this? Whereas like people like Palin or Green will be upfront of like, I don't vaccinate it, whatever. So like either just.
Oh, I think DeSantis is vaccinated. I think all the ones who are like, oh no, that's private information are
they're absolutely vaccinated.
Vaccinated.
And they might as well just admit it because they just sound, again, they look like losers who are just trying to they look like politicians. So politicians, don't try, they try to, it's like the jokes about Bill Clinton in the 90s, who he was always the definition of is, and all that type of stuff. And, I said at the time, I liked Clinton, but that was his biggest weakness because people don't like the idea that politicians are always talking around you or talking or whatever. It's interesting. People would say, well, why was Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or any politician considered more of a liar, even Ted Cruz, than Trump, who overtly lied? I think there was a way that his lies, maybe it's almost because he reached this George Costanza level of believing his lies.
Well, this is the thing. Like, it's like with anything else. If you keep doing it over and over again, it becomes like the normal. And if you tell one lie, then people are like talking about that one lie all the time. It's, that's how shit works, unfortunately. If you're an asshole all the time, people are like, oh, that's just this person. That's how they are. If a nice person is an asshole one time, they're like, oh my God, why are you so horrible? It's, whatever is unexpected. And same thing, like if you're an asshole all the time and one day you're nice, people are like, oh my God, how wonderful of you.
Yes, exactly.
Like, one thing right, and people are like, what a mensch. What a mensch. So
you've written something positive this week. Is there something we can leave positively on?
Hold on. I did have a positive thing, but all I can think of right now are the fact that the special necklaces that people were wearing to prevent like being murdered by 5G turned out to be radioactive. And that brought me
it always it sort of, again, from
a little bit of joy.
Well,
and I don't want them to turn into spiders or something.
It was as if they hadn't read Superman comics. So for years, the idea of like Lex Luthor, who's supposedly a genius, right? He's a genius.
Yeah.
He always kept kryptonite with him in case Superman could not get close to him, and he wore a kryptonite ring, and eventually he wound up, of course, with cancer. And he was like, "What? Kryptonite only affects Superman?" And someone explained that, well, it's still radioactive, and you probably should not have radioactive accessories like literally on your. And it was and
always remove one radioactive accessory before you leave the house. That's, I believe, an exact quote from Coco Chanel. My mom would always tell people was a Nazi. And people don't talk about that enough.
But yes, you were almost protected from the bad guys. But yes, your necklace was radioactive, and radiation is not.
So, no, it's not. Oh, they did make it so that people can get abortion pills through the mail. So that's nice. That is a happy thing. I'm a fairly miserable person other than that. So what have you got? I still don't know which way the camera goes.
Before this, we were gonna chat a bit more about bell hooks and kind of the legacy there. I think we did touch upon that. As I said, I just hope when people talk about critical race theory and the response has been to distance themselves from it or say these other things, to recognize that this is this great thinker. Here's what she was saying, and to point out that a lot of what people are denouncing is stuff that she was saying so clearly and so eloquently, and that we need to stand up and because I feel like what's happened is to try to back away from, oh, America, there is no systemic racism. It's not like there's a white imperialist capitalist patriarchy. What are you talking about? America's wonderful. And similar to the very personal attacks against the 1619 Project. And I guess I would tie it all in of like, it's a very strange position to be in when you're also trying to simultaneously say that a political party is trying to overturn democracy. Democracy is ending. It's like, okay, well, you need to kind of come for it. Tell us how bad that is and how bad those guys are.
Use your words.
Yes, be very passionate about it. So do you have an especially fun Christmas Eve or Christmas Day?
We're going to my dad's cousin Jerry's. That's because he lives here. That is about it.
You don't watch a particular special every year? You don't?
No, I don't. No.
Are you a Muppet Carol person or
what?
The Muppet Christmas Carol? My wife really likes.
I've never actually seen it.
Yes, my wife loves that. She watches it with our son every year, and I will sometimes be present for it. I prefer some other versions of A Christmas Carol, but it's still good. It's Michael Caine.
I'm just hoping that my dad does not play the Carpenters this year, because I'm sorry, I love Karen Carpenter, but like very depressing album. That, and also Laura Nero's Christmas and the Beads of Sweat, which is a lovely album, but
her Christmas Christmas album.
Lovely album, but also like super depressing.
Yes.
Italians, they're a morose people.
Yeah, it's a very sort of sedate, but I like poppy Christmas music. We discussed, so I'm growing up in the 80s, I will do that. So I like it, well, we will talk offline about what you're still planning to be around on the day after Christmas, or are you observing the Christmas holiday?
We Italians only do Christmas Eve, so really like Christmas. Christmas Eve is like the big night, and then Christmas Day is kind of like whatever.
Well,
it's fine.
That's actually a somewhat of a presumably Christ was born after midnight, because that's the 25th, but Christmas Eve. So it's still Christmas, but like in the evening But in the morning, it's just like,
That's probably why they go to midnight. I don't go to midnight mass. I'm not actually Catholic.
yes,
so.
I know folks who, I know I have some Catholic friends who do their tradition is midnight mass. They come back from it and do Christmas stuff. And then the next thing you know, it's 6 a.m. and they're opening presents. It's like an all night Christmas celebration, which sounds insane to me.
Yeah.
But I am impressed by people who can power through. So
yeah, I know. I will say one thing that I do plan on doing, because I do it even when it's not Christmas, is listening to Patton Oswalt's stand up about the Christmas shoes, which is still my favorite thing in the world. I still can't believe that song exists. Maybe I'll watch the movie.
Yeah, yes, I recommend that, both of those. So, well, yes, well, happy holidays, Merry
Happy holidays to you.
Christmas Eve, and thank
And
you
everyone
everyone
else.
for enjoying this not particularly
Festive
Christmas special. Take care.
Okay, bye.